Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science.
Hi guys.
Directly from Frankfurt, Germany. And we have a great day today, hopefully. We're going to be talking about existence. What is existence? And probably the most important word in physics. So today's
I thought object was.
kind of, yeah, they're running side by side there. We're going to have our science critic. We're going to be discussing something about accuracy of predictions.
Accuracy of predictions.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Anyways, and at the end, we're going to open up the floor for questions. And let's start with a subject that was left over from the other day, or that apparently some people had a little bit of interest in. And that is, what is our natural diet? Now I want to get the question right.
What?
Yeah. Because some people.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong class.
Yeah. Well, this fellow was suggesting that vegan or vegetarianism or whatever is our natural diet, right? That's what he was suggesting. And I just want to focus on the question because some people answer the wrong questions. They go out there and they say, look, I think you should eat this because it's healthier or whatever, and that's not the question. The question is, what is our natural diet? So let's try to focus on the question and not get into politics and opinions and, religion. Okay, so here's the question. As this fellow put it the other day, he says, the best way to get your health back is to go to your what? Natural diet. Raw vegan diet. Okay, that's what he recommended, and that's what he thinks our natural diet is. Okay, so that was our starting point. Now, one fellow did not answer that question. Answered another question. I'm going to put it anyways because of
That's
an
a bad
issue.
example.
No, because of an issue that he raised. I think we should touch upon. And the fellow said the following. Okay, there we go. Says, eat everything raw. Okay? When you cook food, you destroy ingredients and they practically turn into garbage. Blah, blah, blah. Okay? There is a lot of oxygen in the blood, so we do not despise blood. It is life. Drink blood and you'll be, what?
Enriched.
Enriched. Look like a seed to me too. Enriched with additional oxygen, etc., etc. Okay? So he recommended that you eat raw food. Okay? And
Or the spiky canines to tear the heck out of apples.
that's the subject I found out this week as well. We got canines, unlike other animals that don't have them. And we'll get to that in a second here. But this is the issue here that I wanted to answer for this fellow, okay?
Natural diet, any food for the day. Whatever we find.
Is Kentucky Fried Chicken still open? Okay, so this is something that I just want to point out to this fellow. Number of sites with good evidence of fire per 10,000 years. Went out there and looked at all the sites that we found to date that show absolute proof or evidence of fire. And before 400,000 years ago, we have no sites. There are no sites that we can really put our hand in the fire for. The fire kind of, controlled fire here we're talking about, okay? Controlled fire because fires, I'm sure, our ancestors, Homo erectus and beyond, probably saw fire. They probably had forest fires and who knows what. But controlled fire, okay? When they say cooking, we're talking about from 400,000 years onwards. Okay, and you can see here the number of sites with good evidence of fire, the years in which these sites are found, and you can see that more and more sites are found as we get to the present. That's to be expected because obviously the farther back in time you go, the harder it is to show, that there was a fire. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there, it just means it's hard to show, okay? So those are the, in general terms, more or less so that you can get a ballpark figure on when we had controlled fire. Yeah, we're talking about cooking here, okay? Cooking meats. Before then, well, maybe there was a time where they cooked and we don't have evidence. And before then, we were just eating everything raw, apparently. Okay, now That's the general picture. Take it for what you want. Okay. So the question is, back to square one. What is our natural diet? How do I want to get to that question? Well, I want to look at the evolution of man for those people who believe in evolution, right? Even the Bible says that the animals were made for man, so he could kill them and eat them, but that's a separate story. But here you have the situation where you say, well, what was our evolution like? How did we evolve as humans? Did we evolve as predators? Were we carnivores? Were we vegetarians, vegans, or whatever? Or were we omnivores, which is another issue? And that's the issue a couple people raised here. Here we see it. One fellow says, human beings are omnivores. We need meat and veggies. Based on a study of ancient human skeletons, the ideal is about 60% animal, and again goes into, what is healthy and so on. We don't care about the healthy part. We just want to know, what is the evolution of our stomachs, you could say, right? Another fellow also says, we are omnivores. And another fellow says, humans evolved as carnivores. Ha, ha, ha. He didn't like that at all. And he says, hunting and gathering, omnivorous diets began at the same time. Now, my point last time was that, those spears, they were not used to hunt apples or pumpkins, okay? They were used to hunt animals and probably defend themselves against other
It
animals.
was to hunt the animals that had the apple in their mouths. That's
Yeah. In other words, I think for the most part, we were carnivores, okay?
For the most part. You think it's mostly, you'd say 60-40 like the thing said?
Okay, let's get into that. Are we omnivores? Are we vegetarians? Are we carnivores? Which one are we?
I think anyone would say we're omnivores. I mean, here's a question.
Yeah.
Can a cow digest meat?
Okay.
Can a lion digest lettuce?
And that's because that's their evolution. Now we can eat both, right?
Both, so
yeah.
it stands to reason that we're omnivores.
Okay, but
by definition,
is that how we started? Because now we're talking about millions of years. What is our history? That's what we're looking at. That's what I'm going to go into in a second here. Okay, so
is eating habit a specialization
or opportunity? How we evolved? We just.
What I mean is,
we squatted that niche.
Are all animals omnivores when they start their species and then they specialize into carnivorism and then forget one? The other, or is it the other way around that they start as a carnivore or a herbivore and grow into an omnivore?
Well, let's find out, because man is going to answer. Man's going to answer that question. Okay, let's look at man. Okay, here we have humans. Okay, more or less. Now you don't have to believe exactly that this is what happened. These are assumptions. Okay, in general, this is our, you could say, state-of-the-art knowledge. We came from some kind of monkey. Okay, we'll call him Australopithecus. We went through Homo habilis, a man who started using tool, or some human-like creature, some hominid, right? Homo erectus, you see the dates there at the top. Then we went to Rhodesiensis in Africa. In Europe, he was called Heidelberg. Okay, more or less that's the same stage. And then we ended up about maybe 200 to 300,000 years ago with Homo sapiens sapiens, which is what we are today. Okay, so that's more or less the evolution. Okay, the big picture. Fire, I put it on modern human, but you could say maybe up to 400,000, maybe even Rhodesiensis, Heidelberg, they probably used fire. Okay, in other words, controlled fire. This is the general picture. Okay, and that's what I'm going to use as an assumption. Okay, now as you can see here, we started out as as herbivores and fruitivores. We ate fruits and veggies at the beginning, perhaps, and maybe took advantage of some kill by some other animal and started eating meat, and that's how we became omnivores. You already have this individual, this proto-hominid, you could say, Australopithecus, and he was already an omnivore towards the end of his existence. and in other words, he went from herbivore to omnivore. Homo habilis was also both an omnivore. He ate both veggies and meat. Probably took advantage of kills out there, and lost the ability to climb trees like other monkeys can do today. Why? Because he probably felt more or safe enough to be, on the plains. And as you move along, you go to Homo erectus. He was a hunter. He was a meat eater. And this fellow lasted for the next 2 million years, if we count all the way to us, and assuming we evolved from erectus, right? Um, so we're talking about, a meat eater here. He's a carnivore.
This is
He's
a good point, actually.
okay, and then
When
let me finish the.
Okay, okay.
Then we have Rhodesiensis, and again, he starts about maybe 800,000 years ago. He evolves from erectus, and again, we're talking about Heidelberg here in Europe. And both of them, they were meat eaters, net meat eaters. In fact, Neanderthal, who descends from Heidelberg, is considered to have eaten 99% of his diet being meat. It was probably 100%. I don't know if he ate any nuts or berries or any other thing. And eventually we ended up with our humans today. And what are we? Well, we're moving from carnivore to omnivore, back again. And
there seems to be a consensus in the chat that no, keep that there.
Okay.
There seems to be a consensus that we're always omnivores. In fact, there's even comments that are saying what I was about to say. How we haven't been, we weren't always the best at hunting. We were kind of more prey-y, so we couldn't really rely on eating meat because we weren't so good at hunting. But as you become more and more the dominant species, the what do you call it, apex predator,
right,
then
you become a
it
carnivore.
allows you to be a carnivore.
Yeah, and that's really the point here. The point is that even though Homo erectus and Rhodesiensis were omnivores to some degree, I can't say that they were full, 100% carnivores. The amount of veggies that they ate, or fruits, or whatever, was a very small part of their diet. And that's what I'm going to get to next. And one of the ways we can show this is looking at Neanderthals. Okay, here we have the diet of Neanderthals. Okay, and this is what they came up with. They said, look, Neanderthals ate about 70% of what they ate was mammoth. They loved to hunt mammoth. On the other hand, in comparison to hyenas, they apparently chased after horses. They love the run, whereas the Neanderthals love the close quarters fighting against the mammoth. And you can see the black lines there. Those represent the Neanderthals. The white ones represent the hyenas. This is one study, okay, and it shows that Neanderthals really like to eat quite a bit of meat. And I did see an article once. I don't have the reference or anything, but it said 99% of Neanderthal diet, because of, when they did the analysis of their bones, they concluded it was 99% of their diet was meat. I have to assume that as an apex predator, humans were perhaps at the same level, at least as long as Homo erectus and Rhodesiensis were around. We're talking about anywhere from 2 million to about maybe 300,000 years ago. During that period of time, you're talking almost 2 million years, we were primarily carnivores. Okay, and that's where we, developed
got our vampire.
Yeah,
things.
we got our vampire. Yeah, I mean, that shows you that we're not. If you look at the teeth of animals who are like cows and whatever,
they're all flat.
They're all flat. So they don't have that.
Do you think we dream?
We have canines.
Do you think we dream what the animal lived in its life when we eat them? If we eat a deer brain, do we dream the deer's life?
Well, I do sometimes.
Yeah, it's fact.
Okay, so but for this you need to look at a little bit of the Neanderthal evolution, and I made this map. It's in my book, the Neanderthal book, and it's the Homo erectus empire. These are just big pictures, okay? In other words, very, very general, and some of the dates have to do with some of the finds they had out there. And all I want to show here is that Homo erectus started originally in Africa, moved out to Asia and also to Europe. And by about 800,000 years ago, he ends up in England, merry old England. Okay, that's the only thing I want to show, that Homo erectus already had gone as far as England. And what you need to understand here, and where we got that information, and here we have it. Okay, give me a second here. This is England about 800,000 years ago to about 220,000 years ago. It was united to France, to the continent. There was no English Channel. And so all these monkeys, could be Erectus, could be Antecessor, which was found in northern Spain, could be Heidelberg, because you're talking about 800,000 years ago. Could be any of those, some kind of creature at that level. And they lived in that, you could say, northwestern part of France, which united with England. About 220,000 years ago, the English Channel was created, and those tribes, clans, whatever, those people that were stuck in England eventually died off. And all we have from them is these sites that you can see there, Pakefield and Box Grove and so on. And you'll see some of the dates there, like Happisburg is 800,000 years ago. And they found flakes, they found footprints. Okay, and so we think that there were human-like hominids living in that region. Okay, uh, and the question is, you can see the glaciers are, in other words, the settlements, the sites that we found are all along the glacier that was extending all the way south into England. And so the question is, how did these monkeys live? Did they have clothes? Did they?
Better have. They're freezing their asses off.
Well, you would think so, but that's not the case.
I
see,
do think so.
see, does the wolf put a coat on? Does the polar bear use a coat?
He also brought his own.
Yeah, we had also a woolly rhinoceros that eventually became extinct. Woolly mammoth. So all these animals, they lived in the north. And how about the woolly man? That's what these people were. If Homo erectus did not control fire, we could assume that they did towards the end of their reign, but certainly not at the beginning. And we find them 800,000 years ago in England, next to the glaciers. You would have to assume that this animal, this hominid, he was nude.
Covered only by. Assume that he's nude.
Well, he had no clothes. So the question.
Well, yeah, if he didn't have clothes, but
He had no shoes. He was stepping on the snow, etc., 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 etc. Just think about it. It's like a wolf. The wolves sleep in the snow, and you say, how can a dog sleep in the snow?
Would woolly man have been a better name for them?
Maybe true. But then you would have several woolly men from. Erectus, Heidelberg, and,
there's
Neanderthal.
still people we know who are very woolly. They have hair on their backs and shit.
They're known as Armenians.
Yeah. they can make it through the winter, no problem.
Okay, so here are the Neanderthal sites. The official one is the one that you see, the long one there, the big train tracks. I put the red line there because I don't think that the ones on the east side are Neanderthals, especially not the ones in Israel. I don't think there were any Jewish Neanderthals, riding camels. Neanderthal was an animal or a hominid that lived in cold weathers, not in the hot weathers. I don't think Neanderthal ventured south. So, I disagree with that map that they put out there showing that Neanderthals extended all the way to Israel. And I do argue, and I think with good reason, that several analysts, I'm not an analyst of bones, I just read what they wrote, okay? And what they wrote is that the Neanderthals, the alleged so-called Neanderthals of Shanidar in Iraq and some of the others in Israel, are notably different than the classical Western Neanderthal of Germany, Spain, and France. And so they noticed differences. And that's why I'm saying that maybe we're not talking about the same creatures or the same clans. I don't think they were Neanderthals. Some other creature that was there. Okay, but the point here is the following. Here we have the Neanderthals. That was probably their last stand. They made in southern France and probably most of Spain, especially down south in Gibraltar. Okay, maybe that's where they made their last stand. A couple of people argue for that. I more or less agree with them. I think that's probably where we'll find the last, or the latest Neanderthals, right? And this is, in general terms, the path of humans. We started as Rhodesians, Homo rhodesiensis, way down south. Now, the itinerary there is not to be taken literally. In other words, what I'm showing there is simply that there was a movement of humans from Africa into Europe and arrived in Europe maybe around 40,000, maybe 35,000 years ago. And I'm saying by that time the Neanderthals were gone. But the Neanderthals, two things. First, they didn't wear clothes. They didn't have any need for clothes because they had an evolution from Heidelbergs and before them from antecessors, before them from Erectus, all of which already lived in cold climates. Second, I think 99% of their diet was meat. And I think humans were at that time at the same level. We were primarily meat eaters. Did we eat veggies? Probably did so, but maybe veggies was a very, very small part of our diet. In general, what we ate was meat, and I think that's what we used the spears for, to kill animals. Okay, live one more day. Okay, so here's a study. This is a modern day study of hunter-gatherers that are still around today. Okay, but keep in mind, we're talking about hunter-gatherers of today. They're not so hunter, no, not so much gatherers as you're talking about.
They gather more corpses.
Well, you can't compare them against the hominids of the Paleolithic. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and this is the study. Okay, this is I guess one of the charts there, and it shows that approximately 70 to 75% of these modern day hunter gatherers is primarily meat, and there's only about maybe 25 to 30% which is veggies and maybe fruits, non-meats. Okay, that's the general picture. But again, the author of that is this fellow here, Cordain, and he says the diets of modern day hunter-gatherers. Okay, so he makes that clear. Okay, and consumed high amounts of animal food. Okay, again, we're talking about today, right? Most 75% of worldwide hunter-gatherers societies derive greater than 50% of their subsistence from animal foods, whereas only 14% of these societies derive greater than 50% of their subsistence from gathered plant foods. Okay, but again, we're talking about modern day and not how we evolved. Okay, this is there's another way of showing where we stand today. Are we omnivores? Absolutely. In fact, we can almost call ourselves vegetarians and not carnivores anymore. Here are the numbers. Okay, these are the tons of meat produced and sold in the world today. I think this is an objective statistic. Okay, 340 million tons of meat. That's how much we produced in 2018. The numbers have changed relatively little to today. Okay, in contrast, we have 2 billion tons of grains and 1 billion tons of veggies.
I'm pretty sure that has to do with the economy.
Well, the point here is that we produce this. Some of it goes to feeding animals, but the point here is that you have a 10-to-1 ratio between veggies, if we lump them all together, right? Veggies and meats. There's a 10-to-1 ratio. That's how much we consume on Earth. And so
More than 10,000 to 1.
It's a 10-to-1. It's
340 million to
no, yeah,
2 billion?
to 2 billion and
man.
1 billion. Well, 2 billion grains, 1 billion veggies, a little more, whatever. But it's a 10-to-1 ratio. You have 3 billion versus 300 million. So you have a 10-to-1 ratio. We are essentially vegetarians today. we've gone back to being omnivores, but more on the veggie side. And I think that if you go back to those millions of years in which, maybe 2 million years, in which humans evolved and we evolved our fangs, right?
Now we use them to chew rice.
Yeah. I think we evolved our guts and everything to eat meats originally. So, but now we're changing that and going back to veggies. Where did we start that? With the agricultural revolution. You're talking about the Neolithic, maybe 10, 15,000 years ago, maybe a little more. We started eating veggies again and
more practical, I guess.
Well,
Cheaper.
not only that, it's that you can feed more people or produce. It's more efficient to feed people with,
it's peasant food.
Purina man chow, than it is to feed them with meat. Okay, so let's move on here. We're going to look at, what is it? Our extinction segment. Very quickly here. Got relatively little to show today, but here it goes. First one is the world population bomb might not go off after all. And the other day we passed the 8 billion mark. November 15 of last year, we passed the 8 billion mark according to one study by the United Nations. And the demographers had a peak inside of 10.4 billion around the year 2080. But a new report, parallel report, says that that may not be true. Says if economic development continues at the current pace, the report still finds that population growth could peak at 8.6 billion in 2050 and fall below 8 billion by 2100. In other words, we're going to peak mid-century and then it's going to be all the way down. That's what they're saying.
And they're not scared about and fall below 8 billion. That doesn't scare anybody.
Yeah, that's one issue.
They say it like it so nonchalantly.
Yeah, a lot of these people are environmentalists or conservationists, and they're looking at the environment and saying, we're destroying the environment. The fewer people, the better. And so when it comes down, they say that's good news. And the question, is that good news? Maybe it is for the environment. Is it good for the economy? That's another issue. But I circled here this other part, which I thought was amusing, because they still haven't gotten a handle on why we're not having children. Education and economic progress have reliably reduced fertility rates in the past. As economic conditions improve for more women, especially in developing countries with the highest fertility rates, they will have fewer children and lead to a quicker decline in global population. And again, these people have no clue whatsoever. No, it's got nothing to do with education.
They're saying educated women make less kids.
Yeah, and I've shown in the past, I'm not going to do that again, but that in the 19th century it was the rich people who had lots of children. And I've got lots of pictures on that. And people can't get their minds wrapped around that because we always put lots of children, poor women, and that wasn't the case in the 19th century. That's one issue. But there's another issue, and that's that, and I'll tell you a little anecdote, and that'll put it in the right perspective. I was at a house where they had a servant, a woman, and she was severely uneducated. I mean, she was just a person who was looking for a job in the city, and she had a boy, and she would bring the boy with her to the house while she did the chores. And so I asked her if that was her only kid. She said, yeah. And I asked her if she was going to have more. And she told me a little story. She said, my father in our little town, he had like 4 or 5, 6 girlfriends. And with each one, he had like 5 to 8 kids. So, half the town looked like her because there were like 50 or 60 children that came from the same father. And all these women just had children with him.
Dude's got a lot of alimony to pay.
Yeah, but it turns out she comes to the city. She has this kid. And I said, so how many more are you going to have? She says, no, I'm not going to have another one. I said, why not? She says, no, I got to work and I can't, I can barely stay alive as it is, with what I make, et cetera, et cetera. And this was an ignorant woman, not educated. And she already knew, from her own skin, her own experience, that she was not supposed to have another kid. In fact, the one she had probably was a mistake. And so here's the rule, okay? It's got nothing to do with education, which is what these people are saying. It's got to do with your urbanization. You come to the city, you stop having children. It's city life that kills children. Cities are not made for children, period. So whenever all these people say, well, we don't know why population is declining or we're not having children, etc., it's because you come to the city. When you come to the city, children stop.
I mean, there's more to it, but you're not going to go into it, right?
Right, but I mean that's the big picture.
You're making it sound like voodoo. Oh, the cities make you sterile.
As soon as you cross the highway,
my balls shrink. No.
Okay, here's another. Oh, geez, he went. I always get it.
You need a better system than that, but Jesus Christ.
There he goes. Okay, EU chief calls for muscular policy to counter China's alternative world order. We have a new world order, but it's not the one you were thinking of. It's the Chinese new world order. Uh-oh. And this is Ursula von der Leyen, and she says China's pursuing a systemic change of the international order. Okay, and so she recommends, she had a talk the other day, restricting European companies' investments in what? Robotics, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, technology, high technology. They don't want to give the Chinese all that technology because they're going to use it to what? To change the world order. And apparently, according to Lyon, she says an alternative vision of the world order. And what is she referring to? The Communist Party of China. Okay, so she's a little worried about the power that the Chinese are grabbing, the influence. That's one issue. And the other one is the fact that, here they are influencing countries with their money. The other day they convinced Honduras to cut relations with Taiwan. And now Honduras instead goes with mainland China, recognizes China as the only China, and so on. So they're Chinese, are mainland Chinese, right? The communists, they're buying people off with money. And that's what worries people like Ursula, because she says, oh, what they're doing is changing the world order that she has in mind, obviously, versus the one in communist countries. She's not the only one. Here we have Mr. Milley. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he went with his little cup to ask for money from Congress the other day, see if they would contribute to his budget, 2024 budget. And obviously he had to paint China as a big monster. In fact, I guess the pitch was more or less like, look, I've got a pop gun, and General Lee on the other side, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in China, he's got a Kalashnikov. He's got an AK-47 against my pop gun. So please give me more money so that these people don't either catch up or surpass us. And so Milley suggested the following, says they have a rational goal to be a global, the global, right? Co-equal with the United States and superior militarily by mid-century. And he says we have to outpace that, and that will assure what? The peace. Peace through strength.
If I have the biggest gun, we have peace. But if two people have the biggest size guns,
then we don't have peace.
Now we can shoot at each other. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, so he went with his little cup, his little hat, asking for donations, and but just for your information, he wants $1 trillion. And that's up from 800 billion. So he's asking for a quarter increase in the defense budget. So keep that in mind. Where's that money coming from? From God, from heaven? Someone's got to pay for those expenses. That's why, the congressmen, they listen carefully. What do you have to offer? Well, what I have to offer you is scare. Be scared of the Chinese because they're going to take over. And that's the buzzword out there today. Everybody's scared of the Chinese. The yellow fear. It's called the yellow fear, not the fever, but the fear. Yellow fever was in 1970. This is the yellow fear. Okay, but is that warranted? And I say it ain't. Okay, and here's why it ain't. Okay, Chinese manufacturing slows in March. Services growth hits 12-year high. What's happening? What's growing in China is services. Okay, there's the expansion of the service sector. What is that? That's travel, entertainment, leisure services. Video games, TikTok, all that nonsense. What I call unemployment. okay, and says that Beijing has set an economic growth target of around 5% for this year, one of its lowest in decades. But Li, the minister, the economic minister, has warned it will not be easy to reach that goal. So China is having economic problems. Why? Because it turned a corner. What was it in 2015? It became for the first time a service economy where services surpassed for the first time in GDP manufacturing. Now, not only do you have that, you have also labor. Chinese labor now is mostly services and growing. What's being left behind is manufacturing. Especially if you have people like good old Ursula, who says that they're not going to sell any more high technology to China so that it doesn't accomplish its goal of imposing its version of the new world order, right? And so I think China has turned a corner. It's reached a zenith, right? It'll keep rising, but what I'm saying is becoming asymptotic, its growth. The country that's growing now is India. Why? Because India was so far back, so underdeveloped, that now with the technology available out there, it can grow at a faster rate, but it will also hit a plateau, turn a corner, and become asymptotic. And so, what happens with when all the countries in the world become asymptotic in their growth? Then I want to see what happens.
And we all go on the roller.
And if we throw on top of that the fact that population is
Yeah.
also going to turn the corner.
Now we all go. See, right now the roller coaster's getting to the top, and then the wee, that wee part.
And I think it's going to be exponential.
It's scary. How I was watching a bunch of videos about how, I mean, I told you how also women aren't having kids. This is becoming more and more apparent to everyone.
Yeah.
And that on top of all this is just, it becomes clear that 20 years from now is going to be a very different world, very old world, very uneconomic world.
What's this BS about 20 years?
I mean, assuming we get that far, this is going to get real dystopian real fast.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be an economic crisis. And when, not if, but when that happens, the question is, will money have any value? Will anybody want money? What will be the reason to accept money if nobody else will accept it? You can't unload it onto someone else because they don't want it, so why will you want it? And if you don't want it, we have a problem because nobody will collect salaries. And if nobody collects salaries, nobody works. And if nobody works, we don't produce food. Forget about all the other stuff, the leisure and vacations, all that stuff. Food is what we need to be alive. And so I say when, not if, but when the economic crisis hits, what I mean by that, money will be no more. Okay, and just in case, just to make your day in an upbeat direction, right? Take it into upbeat. Here we have another problem. The top economist, Mohammed El-Arian, warns that erosion in trust caused by banking crisis will lead to economic contagion. And we had the second and the third biggest bank failures in U.S. history the other day, just a week ago. And they were only beat by the one in 2008 with the housing crisis. Okay, it's the Silicon Valley Bank from California and the Signature Bank of New York. They fell apart. They declared bankruptcy. Okay, and that was a big blow. But did it stop there? No, you had the Credit Suisse bank there taken over by USB. And just in case, the Deutsche Bank is also in trouble. It says after Silicon Valley Bank became the second largest bank of all time to fail, investors and analysts across the world have been sounding alarm bells. Some fear that the entire banking system is still at risk, but many think that the Treasury Department's decision to what? To bail out depositors. So that means now we have the taxpayer bailing out those people who put more than $250,000 in their account, right? Was enough to solve the problem. The crisis raised concerns about the stability of all major banks. But Deutsche Bank, one of the world's largest and most scrutinized financial institutions, is worrying investors more than others. Deutsche Bank was already not in the best shape when the recent banking crisis started. The German banking giant has faced numerous challenges in recent years, with its stock price dropping about 30% in less than 2 months. Despite a small recent rebound, investors remain skeptical about the bank's future prospects. Moreover, Deutsche Bank's interconnectedness with other financial institutions heightens the potential for what? The domino effect that you see there on the left. Should it run into major liquidity issues? So we have banks that are failing, okay? And maybe that should concern you, especially if you have money in the bank. Maybe you don't want to have too much in there. Maybe you want to pull your money out and put it under your pillow because you're probably going to be safer. You know, in Argentina, in what was it, 2001, they did what is known as El Corralito, the corral, and nobody could get their money out for several days. And when they went back, their money was worth 1/3 of what they put in. 1/3. Okay, that's how much it devalued. And so just keep those things in mind. Those poor countries teach us a little lesson that we take into the advanced countries because it could happen there as well. Okay. Anyways, here we have Mr. The same fellow there, El Arian, and he says risks have shifted from financial to economic contagion. So now talking about contagion, looks like we have a virus out there, an economic virus. Okay, and what he says is this will play out probably in the third and fourth quarter, and it will have a long tail. That's what he predicts. He says there's going to be problems towards the end of the year or second half of the year. And just in case, here we have, let me get this one out. We have this other news there. Brace for the U.S. economy to crash land as the banking turmoil creates a credit crunch, Alliance says. And what do they say again? The U.S. economy is going to crash land into a recession in the second half of 2023, according to Alliance. And so, yeah, keep in mind that some things might happen so swiftly, they don't give you time to react, okay? And maybe, you know, everybody knows what to do with their money. I guess you may not want to keep it in a bank. Maybe under your pillow, gold, diamonds, whatever you want to, maybe buy oil from the Russians at a cheap price, whatever. But
buy carrots.
But maybe it's not a good deal to have it in the banks. Keep that in mind. Okay, let's move on to the subject matter of today.
After that little cheerful talk,
on
to important stuff, physics.
Okay, existence. What is existence? And I would say that it's probably the most important word in physics, together with object, thing. What is a thing? Obviously, that's.
I mean, if physics is the science of that which exists, then let's start there, right?
Yeah, and so let me put it in the right perspective here, okay? Physics is the science of existence. I said that, okay?
It's like fucking Bob Dylan.
Yeah. Physics only deals with that which exists. Physics attempts to determine what exists out there, especially, you know, the invisible, intangible stuff, the mediators that Mother Nature uses to do her daily work like gravity, magnetism, light, etc. Religion is what studies objects that don't exist, really concepts, that's what they are. And there you have a few examples. The spirit, you know, is that a subject matter of physics? How about space-time? Ghost, black holes.
Putting them all in the same category?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah, they're all part of religion. Black hole singularities, soul, wave functions, field, heaven. Heaven is a field, right?
Yeah.
Energy, wormhole, dark matter. There you see NASA's, what? Space-time. They put a fishnet under the Earth. And that's
I ain't seen no fishnet under my Earth.
And that's known, or that's supposedly physical interpretation or physical representation of what time is. A fishnet, is that what time is? Is that what space-time is? So you can see we have a little bit of problem with using these concepts as physical objects. And also the question is, can we say that those concepts, those things exist? Those reified concepts exist? Okay, so that's part of the...
Does the fishnet exist? Does a representation
exist? Or is it valid to represent time with a fishnet? I mean, does that make any sense? Yeah. We represent love with a heart. Why not with a liver or with my kidneys? Okay, is there any problem with it? I like my kidney. I love my kidney.
I love my kidney. Without both of them, gonna have a bad day.
Okay, so let's look at the definitions of these words today. We go to the dictionary.com, and this is what we find. So we want to find out what this word means, right? Existence, the state or fact of existing. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, but the dictionary is full of those.
Okay, being, continuance in being or life. Life. Okay, so we look at existing, we
Life?
find exist. Yeah, they say life is also existence.
Rocks don't exist.
I'll get to that, but you hit it on those, yeah. Existing, okay, what does exist? It's a verb. And the question is whether exist is a verb. The
what?
question, that's a valid question. Verb, it's not a dynamic thing. You don't do existing. Exist is an adjective. That's what it is. It's a quality of an object. That's what it. I'll show that later on. But my point is, it's not a dynamic verb. Like you don't do something when you exist. Okay, we can have a cross section in time.
Well, it's a state. It's like it's like sitting. Sitting is sitting a verb.
Yeah,
it's a state. You can say that guy's sitting, but he's not doing anything. He's just in a certain position.
Yeah, so he's not doing anything. So what kind of verb is when you don't do? That's the issue.
An undo.
And undoing. To have actual being, to have life or animation, to live, to continue to be or to live. You look at be and it says to exist or to live. Being, the fact of existing, existence, something that exists. Great, we learned a lot. Existence is to be and be is to exist. And life, what is life? The condition that distinguishes organisms from inorganic objects and dead organisms. All they said is life is the opposite of death or inert. Yeah. Great, so we haven't learned much. An opposite is not a definition, an antonym is not a definition. Okay, so we haven't learned much from dictionary.com. Let's see if other sources are any better. And these I really love. These are better. Here, oh my God. Here, let me get this one. Is that the one? Yeah. Give me a second here. Okay, here it goes. Okay, existence, this is the Wikipedia, is the ability, okay, it's an ability of an entity to interact with reality.
Okay.
Reality being a synonym of existence.
Well,
you look at reality,
I guess it's different.
The ontological property of being. You look at being means the existence of a thing. So they use reality, which is a synonym of existence, and being, which is a synonym of existence. But the funny part about Wikipedia is that they reference the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. That's where they got their information. So we go there, we find this article, long article, and it's not worth even reading because all you got to read is the last paragraph there, and you'll see the sentence there. It says, existence remains then itself a serious problem in philosophy of language, metaphysics, and logic, and one connected to some of the deepest and most important problems in those areas. After reading the whole article, you find out they have no idea whatsoever what existence means. All they have are the theories or the arguments proposed by different philosophers, you could call them, ontologists, over the centuries. That's all they have. They have no definition that you can sink your teeth into. And just in case, you go to the Catholic encyclopedia known as the New Advent, okay? And what do we find there? Well, we don't find the definition of the word exist at all. The word doesn't exist. Okay? If you want to know something about exist, you got to go to the word God. And so they talk about the existence of God. And what are they talking about there? Well, there you see it. Theism, the belief. Okay, the belief in the existence of a personal God, and atheism is the opposite, the disbelief or non-belief, or however you want to state that. So they're talking about belief, not about existence. And they kind of equate that like saying, if you believe, then I guess God exists. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so we don't find anything from the primary sources out there. There are more sources, of course, but what it shows is that nobody has been able to define the word exist in the last 10,000 years.
Everyone's got the notion.
Yeah.
Like everyone's kind of close. Like, we know what it means. Like, there it is. It's there. It's in reality. It's...
Do we know?
Well, that's everyone's kind of circling the drain, but they don't know how to put their finger on it.
Okay, so here are the questions that I propose to get to the bottom of it, at least to eliminate what existence is not about. Okay, here it is. The first one. Is existence an issue of proof or belief? Does existence apply only to living beings?
I don't think anyone would say that's true.
Well,
Except that
some
stupid
people.
definition just now.
Okay, now
Rocks
you'll
don't
find out.
exist.
Can existence be used consistently, rationally, scientifically?
You're saying, is the notion itself inherently irrational? Or could it be?
Could it be, or is there a definition that can be used consistently,
that would
meaning
satisfy,
rationally, meaning scientifically? Can we use the word exist in science? Because if we can't say that physics is the science of existence because we can't define existence.
I've told you before, I would say the word life is inherently, the notion of life is inherently undefinable because everyone has different cutoff points.
Yeah. Okay, that's why we look at the universal, at the word that every living entity fits. That's the issue. But that's topic for another day. But here it is. Okay, let's go with belief and proof. Belief is subjective. And so God says, what's that you say? That my existence depends on your belief? You don't believe in God disappears?
I mean, that's actually something that's brought up sometimes in these theistic arguments where they say whether God exists or not has nothing to do with what I say or what you believe.
Hopefully not, because poor God.
They bring that up.
Imagine if I don't believe in God, then
coming in and out of reality.
Yeah, guy disappears suddenly. I mean, poor God. I feel sorry for him. Anyways, that's one issue. Here's another one. Existence depends on belief, right? And again, that takes you to the contradiction there, or the irrationality that God disappears when you don't believe in him. If you become an atheist, suddenly God disappeared. Poor fellow. Evidence. What evidence are you going to produce for God, or anything for that matter? Here's an example, right? And that's got to do with the see and touch. Is existence something that you can see and touch? Well, we have a problem with that. And here I show this in the past, where you have the Klingon. He's on the other side of the universe. He's got a table. And let's forget about the Klingon himself, which is also true, whether he exists. But does the table exist? Well, I can't see. I can't touch it. I have no way of ever seeing or touching it. And the question is, does his table exist?
You're saying we're making a distinction between the fact that tables can exist as a category. We know that there can be such things as tables, but the table that's there,
yeah, the specific one. Yeah, the specific one. And then again, the question is, if we have to rely on see and touch, experiment, observation, that sort of thing. Experiment, testing, lab observation, whatever you want to call it, we got a problem, because that means the asteroid doesn't exist until it touches the moon.
I think most people, or everyone, would agree that things exist regardless of whether we know about their existence or not. But there are some people
agree with that, but yeah,
I think if you just said it like that, everyone would agree, except the people who go into these deep philosophical tunnels, like they just go deep rabbit holes. They go straight into the rabbit hole, and then they start talking about, well, if the tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, did it fall at all, and shit like that. We're like, what? What does
or did it make any sound?
Yeah, what does an observer have to do with something happening or not?
Yeah, and again, that's why we eliminate the observer in science, in real science, in genuine science. We eliminate the observer. No observer, because we kill the witness. We do the mafia style.
But you do these weird cheats where you put in the observer in a place where there is none. You put in a fake observer,
or where an observer is not needed. Because you have to conceptualize.
Yeah. But that's just so that we understand what we're talking about. Not that there is a guy floating in space looking at the asteroid. We don't care about that guy.
Yeah. Okay. Next issue says, a fellow says, he wrote this today, he says, existence is an endless series of events, so there is no place for a Big Bang.
Hey, who said that?
But the issue here is that, is existence a series of events? Hopefully not. Because what he's saying is that existence is a dynamic concept. That's what he's saying. That's the underlying thesis. Well, is it?
That could be right, because if you just
Okay.
think about reality,
Let's get to it.
if you think about actual reality,
Uh-huh.
not Pop's reality, I'm talking about actual
Ah!
reality,
Oh.
because you make a distinction between or you use as a explanation tool, you use a static universe, but if you get down to brass tacks, there is no such thing. In reality, everything is dynamic.
Yeah, but that's why we have to stop the universe because.
Yeah, but that's why this guy makes sense when he says existence is a series of events, because
Yeah.
that is kind of how it
Yeah,
is.
because it's like saying, okay, my table hasn't moved, right? It hasn't moved, but everything in the universe moved with respect to the table. Yeah,
There's
especially
still
me. I
things
moved
going
back.
on. Yeah.
So the question is, the table is constantly moving with respect to every atom in the universe. In fact, every atom in the table is also moving, et cetera, et cetera. But the issue uh, is the table sitting inside my room? Is that a movie? And you can say, yeah, it is a movie because we're constantly moving, everything's moving in the universe.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is we have to stop the universe to conceptualize
Certain things.
In this case, existence, which is a static concept, which can be, right, um, uh, illustrated or represented in a single frame of the universal movie, a cross section of time, a cross section of motion.
That's a very
location.
strange
Yeah,
explanation tool that you use, but I think it's very useful. Like whenever we talk,
Yeah.
it clarifies so much when you talk about things like that. But if you talk about just reality, like if we're not talking about reality, we're just we're just thinking about what reality is. There's no such thing as stopping time.
because the issue is that people have their minds wandering and they say, well, everything in the universe is constantly moving. That's why we have to stop the universe, step outside the universe for a second together with God there and say, God, please stop the universe.
Yeah.
And you stop the universe and now you say, okay, what does exist? What exists in the universe? And at that point you say, okay, this atom, this table, this, because everything is in a cross section of time, everything has stopped, like in the Twilight Zone episode where the guy stops the entire universe. That's kind of like it should be, so that you can see now what are the objects there.
Do you think maybe calling them static and dynamic concepts, like we understand what we're talking about, but if you think about it, that's kind of a misnomer.
Okay.
Because you're giving a property to an object property to a concept. You can't talk about a dynamic concept if you think about it. There's no such thing as a concept in motion.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
In that sense, it's kind of, you could just call them A and B.
Okay, I'll let you figure out a name for them. I call them static and dynamic.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
You're right. Okay. Anyways, here it is. Let's go to the second part: being and living. I mean, does exist only? Is it circumscribed only to living entities? And you might say, well, of course not. But Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." And that was a serious problem. Here we have good old Descartes. Okay, put him up here.
Of course.
And he said, I think, therefore I am. Yeah, he was a thinker, like the famous thinker, right? And I think he was thinking wrong. He was thunking wrong, okay? I think his reasoning was wrong, because what he's saying, essentially, he uses an operational functional definition, which are irrational, which are unscientific. Why? Because the definition comes at the end of your presentation. So the whole presentation is about defining the word at the end. And that's not the way it works in science. Science, we define the word at the beginning, and then we know what we're talking about. So that's the way it should work. And then the question is, rock doesn't think, so doesn't exist. I mean, if a rock can't think, I guess it's only, I think, therefore I exist, I am, right?
Well, an offshoot of that, some people would say the rock doesn't exist until we look at it.
Well, yeah, but
because we don't care. But that's a different issue.
Again, the question is, does the rock exist on the other side of the universe in the hands of the Klingon who's throwing it, right? He's got something there. For him it exists. It doesn't exist for me. But then we have a problem, because how can it exist for him and not for me? We have a problem. Is this a question of observation, of opinion, of being in close proximity with the thing? I mean, we don't have to go to the other side of the universe. We can go to the other side of the earth. I mean, a Chinese man on the other side of the earth, he's got a table. I can't see it or touch it. Does that table exist? For him it exists. For me it doesn't exist. Does that make any sense? We have a problem. We have a contradiction. That's the issue. The other issue is, can you begin to exist? Can you cease to exist? Did Napoleon begin to exist? I mean, what was it? Feet first?
Oh, that's a good question, because if we're talking about consciousness, now it gets weird, because
Yeah, the question.
people don't
What are we referring
come
to?
into consciousness until
Yeah.
they're born. So you could say that guy didn't exist, quote unquote, using the wrong way of saying exist, but he wasn't until he was born.
And the question is it his soul, his
Yeah,
thinking,
that's where
his
the soul and
conscious?
stuff
Is that what exists or began to exist, or is it him, the physical body? You know, so the question can ultimately is, can you apply it to concepts? Can you apply the word exist to concepts in a rational, consistent manner? That's going to be the issue. Okay, so let's continue here. Being, again, dynamic concept. Being the fact of existence, of existing. Again, it shows you that they're used as synonyms. Being, be, exist, reality, all those are synonyms. You can't use a synonym to define a word. So, you can't use the word being.
You can, but it doesn't make anyone wiser.
Yeah. And again, exist is a static concept, and this is how I prove it, show it, explain it, argument it. Here it is. Okay. We don't need to have two frames in a universal movie to conceptualize exist.
What is the universal movie, real quick?
Okay, the universal movie, it means that we take a cross section, like we take a snapshot of every single atom in the universe.
3D.
Yeah, we take a 3D snapshot, right, of every atom in the universe, just everything standing still, nothing's moving. The next frame, everything moves a tiny amount, whatever amount. And so in every frame of the film, three-dimensional film, right, we have just photographs, just a series of photographs, right? So we look at a single one of those photographs, and there we can say what exists in the, what atoms are there? What else are there? Are there chairs? Are there tables? Are there planets? What is in a single frame of that movie?
Well, you're assuming that all things that are in one frame will not fall out in the next frame. They're just going to be somewhere else. You're assuming that in the next frame there won't be new things that weren't in the previous one. They'll just have moved.
Yeah, because if you have something either pop out of existence, cease to exist, or come into existence, you have to show, because that's okay to say it, the trick is to show me the mechanism, how God made that thing to appear or disappear.
I mean, there seems to be
but essentially what you're doing is saying that in one case, you're saying that space turned into nothing, turned into something, and in the other case, nothing, something turned into nothing. And you got to explain the process from one frame to the next.
Well, you have different camps. There's, I mean, everyone who believes in Big Bang and everyone who believes in God, as a physical thing, not just a concept, would say that it is possible for nothing to become something and vice versa.
No problem. I have no problem with that. I just need the process. I need to know the mechanism. If you can't explain the mechanism, you're saying, but then that's black magic.
Yeah, they believe in black magic.
Okay, but then we have to admit that's, if you cannot explain the process, if you cannot tell me the mechanism, you can come up with anything. You can also say that Santa Claus exists, for that matter.
Brujeria.
Yeah, brujery. Okay, and finally, consistency. Can't use exist consistently if applied to concepts. That's what we're going to argue here.
You're saying
you can't use
the word exist should remain for objects and not concepts.
Strictly for objects, circumscribed to objects.
I guess the only reason anyone would say that a concept exists is they're pinpointing. I think this is what philosophers say. They're pinpointing a pattern in reality, a pattern which we've seen exists. And that is kind of where they say, for example, all living things need to eat. Does hunger exist? It becomes one of those things where they extrapolate a concept, a pattern,
but we can't answer
give that existence.
We can't answer the question because we don't know what the word exist means. So
say
that
okay.
until you define the word exist.
But that's why they have a difficulty defining it, because they lump everything into it.
That's one issue. The other one is they start with examples, but they never work their way back to a definition.
Well, because
need
they
to
have too
start
many examples. Because they don't restrict it to only objects. They also say hunger exists, anger exists. They say love exists. That's the wrong word.
Yeah.
At best, that's the wrong word. You're using exist for too many things.
And here's the scientific way of handling that. Okay, in physics is one of the sciences. In fact, it's the main science.
The main one.
Foundations of physics. These are the foundations proposed by Bill Gates, a fellow that I know of out there. Physics attempts to explain how our universe works. First and foremost, physics requires an object. In physics, only objects may be said to exist. Why? Well, you see here. We go through the definitions, a little series here, and they lead us to the definition that we're looking for. Object, that which has shape. Okay? Distance is the separation between objects. Location is the set of distances from one object to all the others, or whatever subset that you look at. And what is existence? An object that has location. Object plus location. A concept, what is that? Existence is a concept, right? A word that embodies or invokes two objects or two words treated as
existence,
objects.
Object plus location.
Yeah. So now we can say that only if you use object, only if, or let's put it in a different way. Existence requires an object. You cannot have a concept such as love and say that love exists or that intelligence exists.
That's the wrong word.
Or yeah, because what are you saying when you say that it exists? Are you saying that you can touch it, you see it? Are you saying that it's out here? What is it that you're saying? You need
their effects and patterns have been observed. And when I talk about it, you know
consequences.
But it comes into this weird realm of when I say it, you know what I'm talking about, so you've observed it too. So is it in reality, but not in a physical way?
Yeah, but then the question here is how can you make sense of that if you're going to say that a table exists and this table exists, and people say, okay, I understand what you mean by that. I can see it and touch it. Yeah. That's more or less the idea people have. We're saying it's not that you can see or touch it; it's that it has location. It's an object, has shape, and it has location. Now, how do we relate to the word to concept?
Can we?
How are we going to use the word for concepts? Does a headache exist? Well, yeah, I have a headache, so for me it exists.
Yeah. So should we have a concept equivalent for exist that isn't exist? Because exist is the wrong word.
Okay.
We need some other word.
That's for other people to work on.
Then it would make sense. Then everything would make sense. Everything would, because I think anyone at least makes the distinction between something, an object having physical presence, and a concept being merely a pattern that we've observed.
Or there's at least a consequence.
There's some qualitative difference between those two types of existing.
That's one issue. But the other one is that they work off of examples and of a series of, because it's got to be dynamic. You say, well, my headache exists because it's an ongoing pain.
But it's a good example.
No,
but it's the wrong word.
This is my right. But what I'm getting at is until you go back and define the word exist in such a way that you can use it consistently, scientifically, right, rationally, that means you cannot apply it to concepts until you can define it in such a way that you can embody or include or encompass.
That's why they can't define exist. That's why they can't determine anytime you see a debate about whether God exists or not, they go off on these just complete tangents because they just don't get to the bottom of it. Yeah. It's as simple as that. There are things that exist, like physical things, i.e. objects, and there are things that, I don't want to use the word exist, blip-blop. Those are the concepts that exist, the patterns that we've observed. That is where God and anger and hunger and love and all these things fall under. That's why they have so many problems with all this philosophy stuff. Yeah. They go in circles. Truth, that's another one that drives me crazy. When people talk about truth exist,
belief,
all that stuff, it's like you're using the wrong word. Exist is not the right word.
Okay, let's move on. Here we have our science critic, and he's going to talk about predictions, but he's going to talk about the accuracy of predictions. Let me put this fellow on so you know what his argument is. Here goes. Listen carefully. The questions and issues to be addressed in this rebuttal include: is guessing which horse is going to win the race a part of science? And if a prediction materializes, does that confirm the physical interpretation of the phenomenon?
With predictions, it doesn't matter whether it's a description or an explanation. The point of predictions is to validate whether what you are testing is accurate or not. Let's take weather forecasting as an example. Let's say that you've got two different models. One says that it's going to rain, and the other says that it's going to snow. If it rains, then the one that says that it's going to rain is more accurate. If it snows, then the one that says that it's going to snow is more accurate. And if it does neither, then you're probably going to need a better model.
Okay, so let's go through the rundown with what this fellow said. He's got so many things wrong, it's hard to know where to begin. First thing, prediction is not an explanation, okay? It's important to establish that because, well, I'll get to an example in a second here. Prediction is a description. If I say that tomorrow there's going to be an eclipse at 2 o'clock, all I've said is a description. I haven't explained why that's going to happen. If I can explain why it's going to happen, I'm going to give you an explanation. I'm no longer talking about the future. I'm not talking about a prediction. I'm talking about the past. I'm talking about something I had experience with or some contact in the past with. Okay, so as soon as you explain why a prediction is going to come true, you're no longer talking about the future. That's why prediction, just a statement, is nothing but a description. And that's important. But this fellow says, well, it's neither. We don't care about that, etc., etc. What does he say? He says accuracy. He says it either snows or rains. Well, we have the difference between physics and math now, because physics is qualitative. It either rains or it snows. Okay, it can't be both. Okay, so if it snows, it didn't rain. If it rains, it didn't snow. It's a black and white issue. But this fellow puts talks about accuracy. And so, here's an example for accuracy. Okay, we're going to get a pencil. Okay, do my famous experiment, $1 million experiment. We let go of the pencil and it falls to the floor. Now, it either falls to the floor or it don't. It's one or the other. It can't be both. Okay, so it either falls or it don't. This fellow says, well, we don't care about that, the black and white kind of stuff, yes or no. No, he cares about how fast does it fall? Like, what is the acceleration? So he says 9.8 meters per second squared. Well, maybe it's 9.81, maybe it's 9.80, maybe it's 9.79, who knows? The point is, he's talking about accuracy, which is an issue of mathematics, has nothing to do with physics. Yeah. Physics is just black and white. Did it fall or not? Black or white? Did the eclipse happen or not? And the guy says, well, it happened at 2 o'clock and 1 minute in the afternoon. Like, that's accuracy. I can predict exactly the moment it's going to do it.
Close as they get, and we're just
but that's a mathematical issue.
You're saying it's 100% or it ain't.
Yeah, so we have a difference first between physics and math. That's one issue, and we don't care about math. We're talking about physics here. And then the other thing is, he says, a model that predicts, that's just a description. Because again, if you're just going to predict, you're not going to tell me why. And if you can tell me why, you're no longer predicting. Now you're talking about the past, about something you already have experience with. Okay? Okay, let's go on to some of the questions that people made since last time. And then we'll open the floor for questions here.
I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
No, at the end.
Oh, okay. So let's go with the first one. Don't forget it.
Yeah, I kept it in my head.
Okay, so a fellow says, science is based on faith. Uh-huh.
Oh, shit.
Both religion and science give us knowledge of the unseen world. Knowledge of the unseen world. Okay, all knowledge of the unseen world must be based on faith. Uh-huh. So science is a religion. Furthermore, each scientist has a different level of faith. Some believe in it more than others.
This guy's throwing the words around a lot like it's candy.
So
people don't care about the words they use, do they?
Yeah, they don't. So I got to show this fellow the following. Science, real science, genuine science is rational explanations. There's nothing about belief in there. Okay, belief is what comes out of mathematical method. You know, what the mathematicians call science, which
Really
is
not
not
even
science at
that.
all.
Really not even that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, belief doesn't even come from math. Belief just comes from people not knowing how to use science.
Well, that's true. But my point here is that under that definition of rational explanations, there's no uh, uh, provision for belief. Okay? So that's what science is. Science is just explaining, especially as it relates to physics, explaining phenomena, physical phenomena.
I mean, science doesn't really care about beliefs. It cares about assumptions and their conclusions.
Hopefully. And belief is totally in religion. The problem is that mathematicians talk about what? Proof, truth, knowledge. They know.
Well, because they're trying to attach it to reality. So the chain of command is something like, there are things we see in reality, we would like to explain it. So we have to connect our assumptions with things we've seen. We're not answering questions of things we haven't seen because we don't care about those. That's the bottom line. We don't care. A kid is gonna walk up and ask how two magnets work because he's seen that happen in reality. He's not gonna ask you about things that he hasn't seen, that he's never experienced, because that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but the issue here is the following. The mathematicians is not just that they're trying to tell you what they saw. They really try to convince you to believe in their theory.
That's where it gets
and that's when it gets really bad, because one thing is for you to believe in the equation, that they were able to make an equation that describes what happened. No problem there. We have no problem with that. That doesn't tell you the explanation, the physical interpretation for what caused that event or that phenomenon to happen. That's where they put in a lot of garbage, a lot of irrationality, and they say we proved it.
Authority.
What did you prove? Yeah, authority also. But what did you prove? Did you prove that that's time is warped? How did you prove that?
And to whom did you prove?
Yeah,
that's a big one.
That's another.
It's been proven. To whom?
Yeah.
It's like when people say we're insignificant in the universe. To whom? Not to me.
And again,
I'm significant
what
to
they want to
myself.
show is that they know. That they've proven, because
stop
they
asking
know,
questions. That's what that means.
More or less.
we know.
We know. Just memorize it for the test, and you'll know it too.
Go look at what's behind the curtain.
Okay, another fellow says, belief is a destroyer of knowledge. Believing is philosophical suicide.
What?
Thinking stops where believing begins. Belief is accepting something is true without evidence.
What?
It requires evidence. So he's saying that if we have evidence, I guess it goes beyond belief into knowledge, which at the bottom it says it's just true, justified true belief. I guess we're back to square one. So the only barrier to truth is believing you already have it, or that truth is unobtainable. Our best route to truth is the scientific method. When we know something, it's not belief. It is fact, an empirically correct truth. So this fellow is going around in circles, going from belief to knowledge to truth to fact.
He's saying that's the process. It goes from belief to knowledge to truth to fact to belief.
And the issue is, all he's doing is chasing his tail around. Are we saying that belief is, if you believe something, and he says without evidence, then it's just belief. It becomes, I guess, knowledge or truth or fact.
When you've gotten enough evidence.
Yeah, it means that they convince you. They convinced you.
But he's right. He's right.
Yeah, I mean, he's right in the sense that they convinced you. That doesn't mean that you have the truth.
But that is how it works. You believe something, you look for evidence, you find evidence, even if it isn't. I mean, it's evidence to you, because that is what because that's what proves it to you. In retrospect, it becomes evidence.
Yeah, the point here is that truth, knowledge, proof is subjective. What you believe.
What is evidence? Is it not, by definition, tool to convince?
Yeah. That's what it is. It doesn't mean that you figured out how Mother Nature runs her universe. It just means that whatever they showed you, you believe it because you have evidence that is evidence for you. So some person says, I have evidence that God exists. Okay, show me what the evidence is. Well, look at the flower. Who could have made this except God? And so they come with these arguments and they say, we have evidence that God exists because there's the evidence, there's the flower, there's the bee running around. Who could have done it if not God?
It's very conspiracy theory, the way we talk, I guess.
And so is that truth?
They're trying to convince you. It's like, Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy, but that is the process.
You might as
Like-
well go with the body snatchers, the ETs who come and take our bodies. Then you believe. Okay, here's another thought. He says, to think is a concept and cannot be drawn, but you could pause the movie and there would be something there that you could point to. Okay, so you're pointing to a brain, assuming you had every atom or every cell in the brain in your hands or in front of you, right, that you can see, right? They, the Japanese, a group, right, ran a machine learning algorithm training it to how to generate pictures from brain scans. It can essentially read your mind with a crude interpretation of whatever object you are thinking of. This experiment demonstrates that it is indeed possible to imagine the images that are appearing in the subject's head. We can make a movie of whatever objects are appearing. Okay, so this fellow says that let's assume, we have all the atoms in our brain, every connection, assuming everything's connected by the electromagnetic ropes, and we have electricity and magnetism, and we also have chemical reactions inside the brain. All that's going on in there, right? Let's say you had God's ability to see, super powerful, right? You can see inside a brain, you can see every atom in there. You take a snapshot at some point, right? A 3D snapshot, one frame of the Universal movie of this guy's brain. You say, okay, that pattern, I know it. I know it by my experience. That's a dog. And more than that, I can tell you that specific pattern, that arrangement, just in that snapshot, right, is a, what is it? Police dog, what is it? Okay, I'll use another greyhound. It's a greyhound, and he's gray because I've seen that pattern before, and I recognize that. I identify it with a greyhound, gray greyhound dog. Okay, so that's the pattern for a dog. Another one could be for a cat. Okay, so this guy's thinking about a dog.
Okay.
Okay, that's if you could see not only the cells, but almost every atom in the brain, and not only that, you would have to see also the magnetic fields, the electricity going through the synapses. You would have to look at.
Much?
Yeah, I mean, what is how does the brain work? Well, you have all these things that are working together to create thought. And so the question is, can you take a cross section of time of someone's brain, take a snapshot of that, God's camera, right? You take a snapshot of where every atom is, what every atom is doing, and doing is a big word because again we're talking about a snapshot. There is no doing there. You just see a pattern. Can you say that pattern represents a dog? That's what the guy was thinking at that cross section of time.
That's what they're saying that they did.
Not really. It's like, because this is an ongoing thing where the guy is thinking.
Well, yeah, you get
There's
a
a
dog,
process.
and then it
I don't think they got it to the point where
bull.
they say that they can see where every atom is. But
They don't have to. But again,
Okay.
but you don't have to.
Uh-huh.
Someone can draw a picture of a dog on a piece of paper. I don't have to know where every graphite thing is on that piece of paper. I get the gist.
Okay, yeah.
You don't have to go to the top.
But the question is, it can. I mean, if you had the brain of Mother Nature or God or whoever, then maybe yes. If you knew where every atom in the universe was, in fact, Laplace said that to, I think, to Napoleon, and he said, if I could know where every atom in the universe is and in which direction it's moving, I could predict the future because from there he can tell you what the next step is. But that's reserved for God up there, not for us puny humans. There's
you get a headache trying to calculate that.
I don't think we'll ever.
Where was the 456 hydrogen atom? Ah, shit, it's already moved.
So I don't think we'll ever reach that level. Anyways, let's open up the floor for questions. We have any questions there? People.
I didn't see many. More just people
fighting.
I guess. Continuing the debate of what you're talking about on their own. Start off with most people talking about how omnivore. We're probably always omnivores.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a matter of degrees. I think we were always omnivores to some degree, but we got the fangs primarily. I think because during maybe 2 million years of our primary evolution, we were primarily meat eaters.
Would you agree that being a carnivore or being a herbivore, would you say that that all animals start as omnivores and specialize into one of them?
No.
Like they die into carnivorism?
No, I look at it in a different way. And let's look at the
Can a
following.
lion become a herbivore?
Well,
With enough time.
let me tell you just how I look at this. When the Cretaceous disappeared, ended, and we started the Quaternary and the Tertiary and all these, our era, the era of the mammals. I think what happened that you had all these little mice, rats, squirrels-like animals that survived the Cretaceous. They were mammals, and each one squatted some kind of niche. And some went after the veggies, and some went after the meat. I think that's the way it was, and they specialized, and because of that, they evolved differently, the herbivores from the carnivores. I think that's the way it was. And I think that happened in every era. Even if you go back to the Cambrian, you will see the same thing. Some specialize in meat and others in veggies.
Have you ever defined the word belief?
No, because belief is part of religion, and I don't do religion.
You talk about belief a lot.
Yeah, because the only reason I talk about belief is because the mathematicians equate it with, in other words, they talk about knowledge, and we know that knowledge is belief. It's that's what we know for a fact. If something we know is that knowledge is belief. Why? Because knowledge, once you have it, means that you believe it. It's just a stronger belief. That's all it is. A greater certitude that you know for sure that something happened, okay, or that something is.
Do you believe in the soul?
In science, we don't believe in the soul, whatever that means. Are you saying believe in the existence of the soul?
Yeah.
Say the whole word. Because do you believe in God?
Yeah, you're cheating.
You're saying, do you believe in the existence of God? Yeah. Well, imagine if I said, do you believe in the existence of this chair? And the question is, if I don't believe, will I fall on my butt on the floor because I don't believe in the chair that's holding me? I mean, does it make sense to say that I believe in the existence of this chair?
If the soul is a concept, is the question even valid?
Well, you have to define
because
exist.
You have to define
exist.
Assuming we take your definition of of exist, then is asking whether love exists even a valid question? Obviously not, right?
Well, no, because immediately it eliminates all concepts. Yeah. So you cannot say that a concept exists because a concept
is that just a no?
A concept is a relation between two objects made by a human, especially. And so, when we have a concept, you can't say that a relation exists. Not in science.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to define the word exist to embody or include, to encompass concepts.
If we accepted your definition and someone asked, "Does love exist?" It would be a hard no by definition.
Yeah, because
not in a jaded love doesn't exist. Not like that. It's by definition.
It's very simple. You say in ordinary speech you can say that, but you cannot say that in science. You cannot say that love exists in science or intelligence or data exists in science. That's okay in ordinary speech, in the ordinary usage of the word exist. Then you can say whatever you want. You can say God exists also. But when you come into science and you want to talk in a rational manner, you have to begin by defining the word exist, if you're going to be talking about existence. And for that, you can only include, as I've shown, only objects. You cannot include concepts. And that's where people have problems because they want to introduce their religion into science, their opinions.
But that leads me to my last question. This one's kind of a tricky one, a hard one. Let's see if I can build it. In the comments, I saw some people talking about if you eat the brain of a deer, you're laughing. We're serious, but that's part of the question. That you dream what the deer lived. And assuming that's true or not, there's a lot of, I'm just going to use the word knowledge. There's a lot of things that we believe and things we know that I guess my question is, why are facts about reality so hard to get a grip on? Because it seems like everyone has. I mean, there's homeopathy. There's a lot of weird things. Flat earthers. There's your stuff. There's it's all kind of lumped up in this conspiracy stuff. But why are conspiracy theories even a thing? You'd think that that facts and the truth would eventually kind of clarify themselves. But
Well,
these
I think-
it's like humans are never sure of things.
Well, we start at the beginning. Why did we invent soul, spirits, God, and all this other stuff to begin with? We
There's a
invented.
lot of reasons.
Well, I think one of the main reasons, there could be several reasons, but one of the main reasons is that we could not see the mediators. We see things falling to the floor like a pencil, and we say, why does it always fall to the floor? And so, the Greeks and everybody else, they asked those questions. They say, why is it so? And they could not see the mediators. So they said, oh, it's God, it's the spirit, it's the ghost, and we invented all these, the soul.
I would add to that.
I think that's one of the reasons that we invented all these
Okay.
things. And mathematicians, they use space-time, time, and fields. And you say, well, what is a field? What is energy? What is space-time? And they say, well, it's this unseen, this untouchable, blah, 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 And again, they get into all these things because they can't see or touch the mediators.
But even beyond
I think
that,
I'm
talking
that's
about
part of it.
even simple things like nutrition. There's so much debate about simple things where you just go, shouldn't we have figured some things out by now?
And again, I think a lot of it has to do with opinions.
Yeah.
In fact, even among those who do research, you have one group doing research, another group doing research. Some of them are, just doing it for a company that's paying for their salaries. Okay, so there's a lot of that, first of all. But then a lot of these groups, they're honest, they're trying to do the best they can, and they have contrary results. And so some people say, well, I'm going to believe group A. And the other guy says, I'm going to believe group B. And so he says, oh, you shouldn't eat carrots because it's bad for your heart. And the other guy says something different. And then so you say, what the, where do you get all these things? Well, it depends on who you read, who you believe. That's all it is. It's just a big mess out there with belief. And that's why physics tries to stay away from belief and stick to,
Really, that's how all
what
science,
you can rationalize.
But all science should work like that, not just physics. Like, I don't know, biology and chemistry and all
should be
these
objective.
Things. It's all just assumption based. It's not what do we believe. It's like, okay, let's just take this as an assumption. Does it work?
Yeah.
One last thing. At some point, we should build our set upside down so that when you throw the pencil, it goes up. That'd be hilarious.
Well, yeah, we can turn it all.
Yeah, we gotta sit upside down. And here's the title. Whoa! How do you do that?
Yeah, well, we can do that with magnets or whatever.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, folks. Then we'll see you again next week. Next time.